Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're in conversation with Dean Ellerby and we're going to discuss all about your cloud career and how you keep up with your skill set. So hi Dean, thanks for joining me today and having a chat around the cloud career and what you're doing in your cloud journey. For our audience, I don't know if you just want to give yourself a quick introduction.
Yeah, hi John. Thanks for having me on. So I mean, my name is Dean Ellerby, as it says at the top, and at the bottom, I'm a Twitter handle there. I'm a technical architect in the modern desktop team in BT. Work alongside you, obviously,
Me, yeah.
and yeah, indeed,
We
yeah,
discuss technology quite often, and we discuss how much there is to know quite often, don't we? So, hence this video, I suppose. I think obviously we've
indeed,
talked quite a lot internally in work, haven't we, around the pace of change and what's going on in technology today. And you know, we're kind of both cloud architects. You're on one side of the fence, I'm on the other. Meaning, I deal a lot with Azure, you deal a lot with 365. How do
yeah.
you see things going from a technology point on that side of the fence, Dean? What do you see things, with the customers you work with and the technology changes? How do you find that today?
Yeah, well, I mean, I work on 365 being Microsoft 365, and crucially not the productivity, not modern workplace. It's more the modern desktop side. So I look at devices, look at device management in Tune, how people actually consume the content that's being delivered to them through the cloud. And it's just the pace of change is dramatic these days. It's it used to be that when you're managing devices, you would use something like SCCM, and that would change once every couple of years, and you would do a big upgrade and learn new things, and that would be it. And then you'd perhaps recertify and do a bit of training and find the new features, and it was really consistent and static. And this such a massive change for me and surely every other um, admin who has to manage devices. They've now got to keep up with changes that if you're using Intune, they're not even announced very publicly. You have to dig out where the changes are taking place in on the doc sites, and unless you're kind of keeping up to date with it probably can be quite scary.
Mm. No, no, absolutely. I think I echo that completely. I mean, on the side of the fence where if you're a traditional infrastructure kind of person, the pace of change over the last few years has been quite phenomenal, and I think now it's seen that a lot of the traditional ops kind of guys are seeing that do we need to skill up on our dev side? Do we need to skill up on coding? And this infrastructure is coding. Are you seeing much of that on Microsoft 365, or is that kind of handled in a different way?
It's really easy to not worry about that. I think it would be very Microsoft have made it super easy to use the GUI. Everything's really intuitive on the Azure portal and now in the Endpoint Manager portal. It really would be very simple to just forget that it is possible to use PowerShell and it is possible to use code to do any of this stuff and just get on with your day. I think for a lot of admins, that is probably how they use it. That's how it's described in almost every docs article you'll see. There's no reason to jump onto PowerShell. There's no reason to almost everything that you need to do day to day is possible to do through a few clicks in the GUI. So why automate? Why go out of your way to use something less intuitive and less easy than the clicky button interface? And
No,
that's a challenge for me. I mean, why do that? And there is a good reason. It's to make it possible to be more efficient and to do something different, to do something new, and generally see what is possible when you move out of the norm, move out of the clicky button interface. So for me, that was a challenge. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, and I think again, it's kind of being seen at the moment that the way of the world seems to be very much around that automate everything kind of mindset, and I've got a little bit of experience in the past with 365, so I know echoing what you just said, it's a lot of the time too easy to go into that user interface and click around and maybe overlook some of the automation possibilities with the likes of PowerShell. So I mean, I mean, do you want to roll it back a little bit maybe and give the viewers a little bit of a background to you and really how you started in IT, where you came from, and really what drove you down that path, and maybe take us on to where you're going or where you think you might need to be going in the future.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not a particularly fascinating story. I started in a gap year from university. I went down to I did my studying up in Sunderland, up in the northeast where I am now, and managed to secure a gap placement in a games company in Cambridge, which was brilliant. Started in customer support there, but very quickly moved into the IT team, and then was there for just over a year doing IT support, um, which I really enjoyed. It was a fantastic team to work with. It was a weird company because it was a games company and they're quite quirky, but they had IT, they had a lot of computers, they had a lot of money, so they could use SCCM, for instance. They could use, Windows 7, which was new at the time, new kit. It was really good, really exciting. And especially for me being fresh out of university, I thought I knew everything, and it was good to have my uh, enthusiasm knocked down a few pegs by the sysadmins who were there and trying to teach me the real way of the world. Um,
So that's an
so that was
interesting
good, yeah.
point.
So that
That's an interesting point, actually, Dean. You say about people knocking you down. How do you feel about that now? Because I know there's a very much a thing, out in the community around those kind of people that kind of gatekeep. They hold on to the secrets and don't let anybody know them because that's what gives them that power of information. Do you come across many people like that now in your day life, or what was that like at the time? How did you handle that?
I think at the time it was a mix, enthusiastic to get started, but coming into a new team with sysadmins who were very Linux oriented, and me who was desperately not wanting to look at Linux at all at that point in time. Everything I would do, it was I'd typically use PowerShell or something to do something and solve a problem, and then there'd be a sysadmin sitting next to me who's desperately trying to get me to understand how we do that in Python. And it's just
Yeah,
those kind of things. People are set in their ways and know the better way to do it. And that guy was probably right. It would have been easier to do in Python, but it wouldn't have been easier for me to learn Python at that point in my life. So
no, exactly.
yeah,
I think from my experience, that's an important point to kind of put across, isn't it? That sometimes just getting on and doing something is the best way for you to learn, I guess. It's all very well having somebody guiding you, which is great, nudging you in the right direction, but um picking up the skills and really working with them. And I suppose that brings us, from, so if you were working that position, how did you kind of morph into the, because I know you followed a similar path to me where you got into the world of consultancy and you found yourself in this position now as an architect. Tell us a little bit about that, Dean. How did that come about?
So I left that post in the games company, um, really to start a new challenge. Really, it was nice. I was there, but I wanted something different. I wanted something um, more focused. And the role I picked up after that was a European networking company, and they essentially had lots and lots of servers for me to look after, and that was my day job, was to look after these servers, look after all the people in the organization's computers using SCCM and using the entire System Center suite as it was. And the System Center suite
Mm.
included lots of stuff like SCOM and Orchestrator and loads of stuff that were bundled into a suite that was really only there because it had the same name. All of these things were
Mm-hmm.
really completely separate products, completely separate types of technology
Mm-hmm.
that really I had no business in getting into. From SCOM was very different to SCCM. Orchestrator was a sort of an automation solution that was really powerful, and I really didn't need it for any of the stuff I was doing. But that my that was a system center um, guy for that company, and that really got me into into SCCM really, and into device management and configuration management. I really enjoyed, and that's when I moved sort of quite quickly into more specific learnings, and really got my skills up in SCCM a good few years ago now. And then, luckily enough, got into this role in BT, working with a fantastic team, including yourself.
Of course, we'd have it no other way, would we? But that's really interesting, actually, Dean. So you've come through that pathway where you've learnt a lot of traditional skills on-prem System Center, like you say, various different products in the System Center suite. And essentially, when that transition to cloud happened a good few years back now, you've had to go on a bit of a learning journey, as we all have in as IT pros, I guess. Tell us a little bit about that. Where did you naturally gravitate? So obviously you mentioned Intune before and device management within Microsoft 365. Naturally, that's got tie-ins with Azure and what's going on in that world. Give us your view on how you came about there, and how did you how did you upskill at the time to understand those technologies, and what kind of learnings did you take from that?
Yeah, I mean, personally, it was really difficult to get myself into the Intune frame of mind, the cloud managed frame of mind, and mainly because Intune was such a small piece of the pie in those days. When I first started using it, it was Windows Intune, for instance. It wasn't really a true MDM platform. It certainly wasn't linked in with Azure, and so really didn't seem to have given it the focus it needed in order for it to be useful. So as a engineer coming from an on-premise background into Intune in those days, I found that really tricky, and the documentation was a little bit lacking back in the day, and not necessarily the content, but the way you consumed it was more difficult in my experience. Whereas now, it's such a step change, isn't it? The Docs website, it's brilliant. It's constantly updated based on GitHub, so it's constantly, there are many contributors. You can see who the contributors are. They can comment. It's brilliant, and that's such a much better way, in my view, to consume documentation in sort of a blog style.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. I think, yeah, I mean, if I look back on my career, everything you've said, I kind of relate with. It's that kind of, you kind of set in this zone that you're working with on-prem kit, and this cloud thing has come about over, I mean, it's been around for, I mean, God, dare I say, 10 years at least that I've been working with cloud technologies, but, even before that. And you think, okay, so we've got this set of learnings that we've done. We've now got to adapt to a different set, which, let's face it, it's nothing new to an IT professional. We're used to change. We kind of have to adapt with that kind of change. But I mean, what specifically made it for you then? So when you kind of transitioned over and you reskilled, I'm presuming you did some certifications over the years, and did you do any of that kind of stuff, or did you delve straight in with a company, with a customer, and start working with that customer? How did you kind of handle that transition?
Well, I mean, the certification piece is really important, and it's, for me, I learn by doing, and so trying to prepare for certifications by following study guides and stuff really didn't cut it for me. So I really focused on doing the certifications that I had that I knew that I was working with day to day. And so in order to move to a new certification, I tried to use that product and tried to use that technology a bit more, and tried to understand it a bit more in order to get the experience and knowledge, so that when I went to the exam and went to take the exam, I didn't need to study. I was just able to naturally know the right answers to the questions. That's typically how I worked with it in the past. And what I've seen since then is that my knowledge isn't okay for me just to know my specific thing. I need to know a little bit about quite a lot. And so it is impossible for me to personally to try to actually physically hands-on gain that experience and knowledge. So it's really important that, for instance, grabbing a little bit of knowledge from Twitter, grabbing some blog post that someone's put up, your videos, for instance, on that you've been doing for your 100 Days of Cloud.
Well, thank you.
Brilliant ways to just grab someone
You're the viewer then, are you, Dean? You're the only viewer.
Experience. Yeah. I viewed it twice, so I was both.
Oh, cheers, mate. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think, I mean, on that note, I mean, so you're talking a little bit there about kind of blog posts and social media to kind of upskill. Obviously, we've mentioned the Docs website. I know Microsoft Learn has had some phenomenal changes over the last, well, since we've been in this sort of COVID situation. I think Microsoft have invested heavily in Microsoft Learn, and even to the recent announcements about the certification paths being, potentially now you can renew by doing an online set of questions, which is a step change from, I mean, traditionally we go to a local test center. I mean, personally, I've been using the remote testing, so from home, where you have to lock yourself in the room and make sure nobody comes in. But it just seems that, to me, that lots of things have changed now, and with that, and equally the technologies have changed. So, like I say, you mentioned a bit there about social media. What do you do to kind of for yourself now? What does your common way of keeping up with that pace of change look like for you? And are you doing anything different, maybe, that our viewers might want to look into?
Mm. Well, I mean, for me, it was difficult to keep up with the changes. I mentioned that for a while I was searching for how to find which bits of Intune had been updated, which bits of SCCM were being updated. Unless you know where to look, or unless you've got a bookmark of the changelog and of the announcements pages, then you're not going to find it. And so the thing that's changed fairly recently is the social media aspect. And I hadn't realized that social media was such a valuable resource of information. It's it has really transformed how I gather information about my own learnings. So rather than me having to hunt out all this information and find where people have tweeted about a particular subject or a particular thing that I might be interested in, I know you know this obviously, so but it's so interesting to me that I just follow people who have similar interests, and they follow people who have similar interests to them. And then when they find something interesting, they retweet it or they like it or comment on it, and I get told about that. And so I then may read that post, may like it, may retweet it, and someone else will see that. And it's essentially crowdsourcing relevant information for my own consumption.
Mm.
It's a brilliant thing that is social media in my head was always a bad thing. Facebook, spending too much time on Facebook in my head was wasting time, and typically it probably still is. But
Yeah.
it's for me, Twitter is a valuable work tool now. It isn't simply me spending some time on social media. I'm actually consuming some valuable information and interacting with it, giving back to the community. There's often I'll read a post that I might have some information that I want to contribute,
Mm.
and we'll click a like and give a bit of comment, um, which is something that I didn't expect to be doing, to be honest.
Yeah, you and me both, Dean. I think you well, for our viewers, me and Dean have worked with each other now for a few years. So Dean has been by my side where I've carried on some really weird and strange social media acts. So I've got myself in various pictures in Dean's company in many occasions. But back to today and the social media aspect. Yeah, again, I agree with you. It's one of those things, and it's a very valid thing to say. To be honest, Dean, I think that's you bang on there. That I don't believe a lot of people in our position, so IT pros, yes, everybody is on Twitter, and as soon as you turn to that community, and I found this very much with myself, there's such a massive amount of resource and information and friendly, approachable people out there that, like you say, you follow the right people, with the similar interests to you, the same technologies, working in similar fields. It's amazing, so I'm really pleased you've seen the same thing that I've seen there. So I
Yeah.
take it you've turned, so you've obviously turned to social media quite a lot now with upskilling. Is there anything else? I mean, I completed the 100 Days of Cloud challenge, and I know we've spoken about that, and I think you're embarking on that challenge yourself. I mean, do you want to give our viewers a little bit of a once over with that, and where what you're hoping, what your challenges are, what you're hoping to get out of doing that?
Yeah, fine. I mean, the 100 Days of Cloud thing, I was really inspired by what you started there with um, with your journey. I mean, it was quite a shock to see how much enthusiasm and effort you were putting into that in the early days. At the start of lockdown, it was a fairly desperate situation for everyone, and to look at you going, right, that's it. I'm gonna do this. It was really impressive. So that spurred me on. It took me a long time to to be inspired enough to do something about it. But yeah, it was inspiring. So that's a good thing. I mean, the thing I'd say is that trying to be inspired and looking at what you did, and I followed as many of your posts as I could. Every journey is going to be different. So my journey is almost nothing like yours. We use the
Absolutely.
same
Yeah.
we use the same template for our 100 Days of Cloud blog, but other than that, there's almost no similarity. And that I don't think that's just because we're different people and just because we're on different sides of this Microsoft 365 fence. I think it's actually because everyone has different interests and has different ambitions about their own learning, their own personal goals, and yours are different to mine.
Hmm.
So our journeys will be different. My focus for whatever reason at the moment is on the security side, because I think that's something that I've really not given enough focus to. So
Okay.
the other side of security, not the defensive malware definitions, protecting computers with antivirus. It's the other side. So reconnaissance and social engineering
Yeah.
and attacking computers, essentially using tools and malware to get users to click the wrong button. How all that works, there's some fantastic books that have been around for a long time. But yeah, it is
Have
it
you
is an
read?
interesting topic to me, and I'm catching up on that.
I was going to say, have you read any of Kevin Mitnick's books yet on those subjects?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I had read one a good few years ago, and I've just bought it again on Audible
Mm,
to reread that. I forget what it's called, The Art of Deception.
that's right. The art of it.
Um,
Yeah, I think.
yeah,
I mean, to our viewers, if you're into, as Dean's pointed out there, the whole security side, that kind of social engineering, that renegade hacker or freaker as he was in the day. Yeah, Kevin Mitnick. Check out his books. Some of them are. I mean, he's got his own security company now, and I think I saw him at one of the events in London going back. Oh God, it's probably about 5 or 6 years ago now. But yeah, such a great book set of books to read. So no, cool. So you're looking at security
yeah.
side. Is there anything else that you've got on your radar over the coming months?
Uh,
That was a
I
large
think I'm going
sigh.
to focus on security. I think I'm going to. It was no. I mean, it's 100 days. It is a big thing,
Yeah,
and and really I want to get as much out of it as possible. So you were very enthusiastic, like I said, and it was clear that you wanted to get stuck in, and so you did what is it, a blog post every day for a little while, and that I'm not going to be able to do that. I want to really get
and
stuck
you
into
don't
it and
need to. Yeah,
really
you don't need to do it every day. That's not the point. It's about setting your own goals and your own pace. It's just
yes.
yeah, we're different people. We got, like you say, yeah, it's all that. So just not to scare everybody that this challenge is about
Yeah.
doing something every day. No, that was just yeah.
It's not 100 consecutive days of
No,
cloud.
that's it. Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
just 100 days of cloud. So that was that was the sigh. I mean, I'm sticking with security because I don't know what I don't know. I don't know which things I want to know next, and at some point I'll say, right, I've done security, I've done this bit. I'll move to something different. Like maybe a robot arm, for instance, that
Yeah,
might come up. Bit of IoT. There's so much to learn, and there's so much that you don't know, and I keep
yeah.
saying that, but it's
I
true. It
agree.
is
I
it is
mean,
fascinating how much there is.
no, absolutely. You're echoing the same thoughts that I had when I kind of kicked it off, and I think if I was being honest, when I got to the 100 days, the 100th day, I realised there was probably at least another 1,000 days that I could go on for. So I think it's really about taking that, understand that breadth of where you are, understand where you think the industry is moving. Um, I mean, that's interesting to hear your thoughts on that, Dean, because I know we've talked about what I do. Like I said, so I come from a 365 background. I was doing messaging and unified comms for a bit, and for my sins, I get pulled back into that now and again. But my focus is very much on the Azure side. So I'm an Azure architect, and I know we've had conversations about employing some of the principles and the way that we work internally within BT on the 365 side of the fence, potentially including. I'm just keen to understand, do you see yourself needing any skill sets that cross over into Azure, or is that something that you think, no, actually, I'm happy in my 365 world over here? Do you see that there's a need to understand a bit more, on that side of the fence?
I think there's a need to understand it. I think for me, there's a desire and an appetite to understand as much as I can possibly understand. Would it help me in my day-to-day job? Probably, yeah. If I knew more about the Azure side of things, the networking, all the bits that you've started to unveil and reveal to me through the blogs that you're doing, and all the other stuff I'm picking up through social media. I do feel I need to understand that more, and delve more into it. So that's certainly something I'm going to be looking at within the 100 days, is branching out into the Azure side, because I feel I've not exhausted, but I've done the device management bits. There's more to do. There's fantastic features of autopilot coming out. There's Windows Virtual Desktop that I do need to spend a bit more time on,
Well, I mean,
and
WVD is a brilliant
application
example,
stuff that's
Dean.
going on. So
We've worked on a few projects now with WVD, and I think you're probably underselling yourself a little bit there. But I think just on that WVD, I think that's probably where I was going with that Azure desktop management. There's certainly a lot of overlap in the technologies, and on that point with WVD is that it's a great technology. There's announcements that have been made fairly recently, and there's constant announcements. How do you feel about that? Because obviously from a device management perspective, obviously, only today I think I tweeted something out from one of the community members around hybrid domain join being now capable with WVD VMs, which is a feature I know we were talking about originally, saying, well, it'd be great if that was there, but as always, something isn't there. That's been announced today. So things like that, where you can see technology moving in a direction that you're used to, but do you feel sometimes you're trying to run behind it, trying to play catch up? Is it, because that's how I felt a lot of the time. Does that have a similar thing with you?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, so running behind it, trying to catch up is I wouldn't say it feels that way. Personally, I think it's more that stuff is changing all the time, and you need to just embrace the fact that if you look at something one week and you know it inside out one week, you won't know it the next week. That's just
Yeah.
something you've got to accept. Something will have changed, something will be innovated, something will be released in either in public preview, in which case you should be using it to understand it more. Everything changes, and when you've got our positions and our role where we speak to such a vast number of customers on a vast set of technologies, that is quite tricky to keep up to date and make sure that the advice you're giving a customer and the tool set you're using to improve their situation, whatever that might be, it is tricky. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've never thought of it as running to catch up, but maybe it is. But yeah, WVD is fantastic for me. It would bridge whatever gap there is between the Azure stuff that you do, and the desktop stuff that I do. That would really, building on that, I think, and using some of the automation stuff that we've already talked about many times and dabbled with in during work time. It is good that we can do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
WVD is certainly
No,
brilliant.
no, absolutely. I think it's just understanding that sometimes for me that the 100 days journey for me was kind of setting that breadth of knowledge, just understanding. I think the DevOps principles they call it, being T-shaped or being M-shaped or U-shaped. So you've got a very broad understanding, but you've got your specialism. So I think for me it was finding out what is my specialism, because I probably had a few over the years. But I tend to kind of do that for a bit, jump and do that for a bit, and do something else for a bit. So, how are you finding that in your world, Dean? Are you keen to stay with the desktop management and the Intune side, and like you say, branch into WVD, and take that path, or because literally the world's there's so much you could do. Is there any other technology
Yes,
out that you
yeah,
think,
indeed.
oh, hang on a second, that's kind of tickling my fancy, so to speak. Have you got anything like that?
No, I mean, so like I say, my core has always been desktop and always been device management, but that world has now changed. So you no longer manage a device on premise. Every user is at home now. It's the law. So
Yeah.
it's a completely different world for managing those devices. It's, everyone's on the VPN or managed by the cloud. So that world is completely turned upside down,
Hmm.
which is obviously difficult for every organization. And I've worked with many who've had to go through the March lockdown and now the second lockdown, which yeah, it is tricky. But my focus, as I say, is moving towards the security side of things, and
Hmm.
things like Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity, that kind of thing is really where I'm going to be focusing personally my own development for from a Microsoft point of view. That's where I'm going to be trying to understand more, and that will lend itself into WVD and lend itself into device management. Antivirus on mobile phones, for instance, mobile threat defense is a key thing that I want to get just my knowledge back up on, because it was always there, but things have changed quite significantly.
Yeah, I mean, have you thought about going as far as Sentinel as well, and looking to get all of those metrics fed into to a Sentinel workspace? Have you thought about that yet?
Yeah, I mean, so Defender ATP or Endpoint is it's a fantastic portal, and has some fantastic features for automated sort of detection and response, for instance, where it can lock down a device if it's uh, compromised. Sentinel takes that to the next level, and it takes
Mm.
all of your different inputs, and
Well,
yeah,
it's threat
that is
tracking, isn't
definitely
it?
something
Threat
I'm
tracking and monitoring and response. So it's just what they call a SIEM system, isn't it? So it
hmm
builds into that ability to take all of these different feeds from, like you say, the endpoints, the mobile devices, the logons, the PCs, laptops,
yeah.
tablets, firewalls, other third-party equipment. Feed all of those metrics into this. Well, it's a log analytics workspace held in Azure, and
hmm
Sentinel's got that technology, isn't it, to kind of hunt for threats or detect threats, and then enable you to have like automated playbooks and runbooks to to detect them and then respond to those events, in potentially some automated way, or flag up your SOC analysts to do something with that. So yeah, I mean that's a really interesting area, Dean. Actually, if you're looking to go down that route, I think I know there's a lot of good work going on internally with us at the moment with Sentinel. So
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, that's the difference. That's the difference for me. It's not just collecting event logs. It's not just
Mm.
being a database of all the stuff that's happened over a certain period of time. It's the automation. It's the analysis. You mentioned log analytics. That doesn't just store the logs. That analyzes the logs, and that does something with the logs.
Hmm.
And does all this stuff to track, and as you say, it can yeah, it can alert. It can automatically respond, and yes, that is something I'm really keen to do a blog post about, for instance, to get more involved in internally at BT, because we've got a fantastic product on the market now for this. So yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned blog posts in there. I noticed that you've recently started your blogs. I know again it's probably a bit of an in joke, isn't it, Dean, that we've been talking about um, starting up our blogs for a number of years. And I think on my blog, I know I've got my first post was hello, and then about 4 years later was my second post where I said 4 years has gone by and I've not done any blog posts. And then I think when I started this journey back up, I think I started 2 years after that and said another 2 years. So was that the same for you?
Yeah.
What's your motivation? Or what do you think the point of blogging about your experiences is? Is that for you or somebody else, or how do you feel about that? Because I've noticed you've started, and they're great blog posts, by the way. We should probably
Thanks
put
very
your
much.
what's
That's
your
really kind of
URL?
you to say so.
What's your URL? You've got to tell everybody so they can go and follow you now.
Yeah, it's Get Modern. Getmodern.co.uk.
Follow
Um,
getmodern.co.uk. There we go.
so yeah, yeah. So I mean, blogging for me was really, as you say, I tried doing it once a while back, and you spend a lot of time setting it up. You put a lot of effort into it. You make it right, and then you do a few blog posts and see how it goes. And I did exactly that, and then you forget, or you get less time to do that kind of thing, and you move away from it. And that's where I think the 100 Days of Cloud will help me, because in order to achieve the day, as it were, in the 100 Days of Cloud, you have to do a blog post. Or you should do a blog post. That's the point. And you should post on social media about it, and you should update your 100 Days of Cloud. And that's a small bit of rules, a small bit of organization where I can say, right, I need to do this. That's what I'll do. So I think that'll help me kickstart back into blogging. I really do enjoy putting your thoughts down on paper. I mean, often I'm not an author. I don't particularly like writing, but it is best to put your thoughts down on paper. And with a blog, you can annotate it, you can put pictures, you can put graphics, you can copy, you can link to the web, you can link to various things. It's a fantastic medium for getting your point across, and that's how blogs work, obviously. So yeah, I think it is a valid medium, and then you can use social media to share that with other people, and they can like it, and then they can share it. It's one big circle, isn't it? It's really good.
No, you're right. Again, I think that's what I found. I think sometimes, I guess, when you work, it depends on the environment you work. But I think for maybe us, we both worked together now. Christ, what is it, Dean? Probably 8 years, 7, 8 years at least. We've worked together now, something like that. So in the
About
IT,
7,
in the IT realm, that's a long time, yeah. Because I think generally I see people kind of jumping around quite a lot. So we've got quite a well-established team. So I think over the years, I think it's probably fair to say that a lot of IT folk are more on the cynical edge. Is that right to say, Dean? I don't know, but I don't know. That's my experience. I'm a cynic at times, but I think when you start talking to people, this is my experience now. I don't know if you agree or not, but about blogging, about social media, about community, about what that is. I don't know. In the past, I've had that kind of almost blasé approach. People don't really take it seriously, and I think I recognise that the power of community was there, but I don't think I ever quite got it until personally I've done what I've just done over the last 100 days. I mean, are you starting to see any of that, Dean? Or is there such a thing as the power of community, and what does that look like, and what does that mean to you? And I suppose I got my opinion, and for you, kind of just starting off on this outward journey yourself, how do you see things at the minute?
Yeah, well, I mean, there is clearly a lot of power of the community for me, but it all come at once for me. So discovering how Twitter's meant to work, discovering blogging, discovering 100 Days of Cloud, discovering the community, it's all come at once. So it's difficult for me to decompose it and say, actually, this is this and this is the other. So it's hard for me to answer that. But for me, discovering the communities and discovering people within these communities, joining user groups, your Wales one is a fantastic one that I have started to join
Clang,
into.
another one.
I lose the quiz
Yeah.
I lose the quiz every time, but I do try. But yeah, it's such a vibrant community of people who have completely different reasons for being in these communities. You've got people from organizations doing this stuff in the cloud, using Azure, giving their insight into how they're doing things. You've got people like us who try to help organizations do just that. It's such a broad spectrum of people, and there are many user groups for all the different things that we do. You've got yours, which is Azure. There's a WVD user group that I'm trying to get more involved in, and it's such a broad range of things that you can get involved in, and I guess it is finding time to do it, but I think you have to make time. For me, I need to make time to do that kind of thing in order to know that I'm not missing out on stuff.
Yeah, do you know that it's funny you say missing out as well, because there is an element. I think that's possibly one of the negatives to the whole social media, is that because you can follow so many people and you can get so many alerts, it's that draw to your mobile device. I think you have to learn, or I've certainly had to learn to actually now it's switch off time, it's family time. I'll get back to that, and that is a difficult thing for people to do, and I've been as guilty as being on it 100% all the time, as maybe a lot of other people have. But I think for me, it is important to find out. And I think I forget where I heard it, but this whole element of, we've talked about the, sort of the work and your life balance, and it's great to work for a company that kind of respects your family life, your home life, and gives you that time. But somebody mentioned, I think it may have even came from Satya Nadella, actually, come to think of it, that we've transitioned into this work-learn life. So the learning element of what we do kind of filters, we've got to have a bit of time within our working day, but it also kind of filters into our personal life. And for me, that's probably the best description of community for me is, your ability, you're still learning, you're putting back, you might be having a little bit of a quip or a bit of banter or a joke with, a like-minded individual on social media, but you've got similar interests, and then next time they tweet something, you're learning off each other, so you're broadening your network and that ability to learn. So I mean, it's great, for you to explain it in the way that you have, Dean, to be honest. So I mean, yeah. So 100 Days of Cloud, you're looking to kick that off now. I think you're on. You've started it actually, haven't you? You're on about, what is it, day 3, day 4 at the minute, something like that.
I'm on day 3. Yeah, public day 3, which was I started looking into Kali Linux, really to understand the bit of the reconnaissance tools that are available in Kali, so ReconNG, for instance, and that kind of thing.
Well, tell us a bit about that, Dean, because I did see your blog post actually. It looked really interesting. Do you want to give a quick overview of what you've learned from that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the thing I learned really is that the tools that are available to people who want to use these kind of tools and find exploits and find information that could be valuable are terrifying. You just put a domain name into ReconNG or the other tools that I mentioned in the blog, and it gives you a list of it gives you a table, an exportable table of hashes, just discovered and sourced from the web. And there's nothing illegal about doing that. It's available on the web. I've not contacted any servers. I've not contacted any domains. I've just asked the web to give me the hashes it's got for this particular domain, and password, clear text password. It is absolutely terrifying that it is possible to do that, and I'm almost embarrassed that I didn't know that was so easily possible. And the thing that is really inspiring me to move forward on this and to learn more about using, Kali's not the only way to learn, but it's a fantastic sort of single source of tools to start with for me.
Yeah.
The thing that's inspiring me is that it's literally labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way down to 14 to start your journey on where you go. So you gather some information, reconnaissance, you maybe try to eke out some information with social engineering, and then you start making some attacks and gathering some technical information. You see if you can get into the organization and run a script, for instance. That's the bit that I want to move on to, just because that's naturally where the attacker would move on to in my head. And this, I'm fairly au fait with the other side of security. So, responding to CVEs, patching computers as soon as they need to be patched, following security articles to make sure you do the right thing. But that's always on the back foot. It's always responding to a threat that's been exposed. It's not actively looking for threats. And there are pen testing organizations and tool sets that you can pay for and use, and yeah, they're pretty brilliant. But I want to learn it myself personally.
No, I mean, that's plausible. I think, yeah, when I saw your blog post the other day about that, I thought, yeah, that's an interesting. I remember it reminded me of when I did my degree back many moons ago. I think one of the modules I had to do was forensics, computer forensics, and you get the ability to, like you say, I was back then equally as shocked and surprised about the ease in which you could just load a couple of programs on a computer and see the world. And yeah, I mean, back then it certainly changed the way that I use my own personal computer. I can tell you that much. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, Ian, I'm really, interested to see when you learn some more and see where you go with that. 'Cause it sounds like a really good way to kind of go. And I suppose when it comes to giving that information back in terms of your day job, that's gonna do nothing more than bolster what you currently know, like you say, from the endpoint perspective. Is that what your aim is, or have
Yeah,
you got a different aim?
yeah. No, I
Yeah.
think that's exactly right. So the more I know about stuff that isn't relevant to the stuff I need to do day to day, the better I'm going to be at the stuff that I do day to day. From my point of view, I don't need to know exactly how an attacker would try to compromise a system I manage, but it's good I do. It's good that I know one vector that they will try and use, or many vectors, and have experience of that, just to spot, really simple stuff that might be missed otherwise. And you're right, it has changed how I do things day to day. I no longer, I make much more use of my password manager, for instance. I use
Mm.
LastPass, and I used it to store the passwords that I made up. And that seemed like a sensible way to use it. But now I let it generate the password. Now I choose to generate a 99-digit password, 99 character password with special characters, because it's just as easy to do that. I'm always using LastPass to type the password anyway. I might
Mm.
as well just get it to generate it for me. I don't need to know what the password is. And even if I chose it myself, I'd forget it in a week's time
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
So I might as well just get it to create it for me.
No, that's a really good tip, actually. Yeah, a really good tip. I think, there's a lot to learn. Like anything with security, there's many different ways that you can take that. So, I mean, that's really interesting. Going to be loving how your journey is going to unfold on that one. I suppose I'm just looking at the time now. We're around 45 minutes or so into this. I'm enjoying it so far. I don't know about you, Dean, but um, let's
Yeah,
have a look.
yeah,
So,
it's good.
I think we didn't know how this video was going to turn out. Let's face it, we had a chat in work earlier. We said, look, we're both looking to kind of get into this kind of way of learning and community. So we said, well, should we jump on a call, see if we can record something, just have a chat about our careers together and where we're going. And I think the aim of this is really to understand, that we are mere mortals, I suppose, and we all probably face very similar challenges within our day-to-day working life, and probably even more so today with the vast and fast pace of change and the vastness of the technologies. And I guess it's just kind of understanding that, look, for me, put those checks and balances in place to kind of understand your work, learn life, and make sure you've got that in some kind of a balance. But then equally, some of the great tips you've given us, Dean, about sort of social media. I know a lot of people in our role probably just don't use social media for that purpose, and I think it's very keen to point out, like you have, it's a very
Mm.
interesting and integral part of your learning journey. I mean, finally, Dean, you've
Well,
seen.
I think
Oh, sorry, go on.
I think you're just on the pointing out that social media is a valuable thing. I know that there are people in our organization and in the world who don't use social media for their personal development, their personal learning journey, because I was one of them just a month or so back.
Yeah.
That was how I completely missed out on that. So if I try to keep up with this type of thing, and I completely missed that. I was using Twitter completely wrong, as you know. I was following people, but for instance, when I saw your posts on Twitter, you were liking posts that you'd seen, but I didn't understand how you'd seen that post. Were you just searching through Twitter all night to get that post? And it's not that; it's that you were notified by 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 following a person that you was interested in that, and you were notified by them liking it. And that's the key thing that I was missing out on. I think I
I
might
think
have been following some people, but I wasn't really interacting with it.
I think it's an important point, the caveat to note here, that what you've just described, I'm sure there's a lots of people that go, yeah, you follow people, you get notifications. But I think in the concept of when, and this is it's a very important point, I think, Dean, that a lot of people do see social media as, like you just say, it's maybe a bane of somebody's life. And it can be. Again, it's that checks and balances, isn't it? It's making sure that you've got that in place, that you don't stare at your mobile phone. But the power of turning that notification on for that particular individual that is a great community contributor and has got some fantastic information. Just after you've finished your evening meal, you get an alert, and you've just learnt something by looking down at your mobile phone that you didn't know before your meal. For me, that's almost not nonsensical why somebody wouldn't do that. And don't get me wrong, I understand completely that there's a different side to that you don't want these alerts popping off. I completely respect that. But for me personally, I don't mind that because, a glance down, yeah, I occasionally get shouted at by the other half.
But you were notified, right? So
Hmm.
you didn't have to search for that information. You didn't have to search through all the stuff that had been posted by other people. You were notified that someone relevant to you who had similar interests, because that's why you click on the notify button.
Hmm.
They posted something, and all you had to do was read the title. It's less than 200 letters, less than 200 characters. Read it, consume it. Is it interesting? Yes, I'll read that blog
Well,
post.
do you know,
It's
Dean?
incredibly
It
easy to
wasn't
do.
for me. It wasn't even that either. It wasn't necessarily that I was following people that had the same interests. I was following people that had an interest in something that I completely didn't really know about, and they were starting to throw information up in blog posts. And I go, and in by reading some of these articles, I was thinking I was then able to kind of start joining a few more dots together and say, okay,
Right.
maybe I do need to look into that a little bit more. And don't get me wrong, you've only got so many hours in the day, and if I'm truthful, that's what I'm struggling with now, is that there is simply not enough hours in the day to. So you've got to pick your battles, as they say. You've got to pick your paths and try and put a
Yeah.
bet. And that's what 100 Days helped me to do, was try and hone in on those areas that I want to consume. I mean, on that note, Dean, I mean, I follow, if the guys are watching this video, there's a plethora. There's too many individuals to mention that I follow on Twitter that I've interacted with, and I mention it in my blog post, my 100-day blog post. That I thank them massively, all of them, because they're brilliant to kind of interact with. They're great people. That's inspired me for a few little side projects that I've kind of integrated a side project. You mentioned the robot arm, and Pete Galler, brilliant. I absolutely fantastic stuff. I love watching his content. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. He's inspired me to go on and do something that I would never have bought a 3D printer, and I would never have printed off a robot arm. I thought, well, actually, yeah, I am now. I'm going to do that. And in doing that, I've now gone into an area of development that I used to do back in the day, but I'm not a day-to-day dev, and I've mentioned this on other blog posts and YouTube videos, but that's kind of inspired me to look at that. Then it's made me think, well, I can integrate this with the stuff that I do know about. So now I can broaden the length of my story. So, I mean, what about you, Dean? Have you got any little things like that? Have you got side projects you're working on that may not be related to IT, but just kind of spur your imagination and creativity? Do you find that?
Mm, yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned the 3D printer. I've had a 3D printer for a little while now, and I bought it because I was interested in something different, and 3D printers became drastically cheaper than they were the first time I looked, when they were first in the media and all that kind of stuff, and they were thousands of pounds, and then they became more affordable. Really,
Mm.
150 quid, for instance, is, for something that I would get use out of, and learn from, and get and really interact with. I thought that was valuable to me, so I thought it was worth it. So yeah, I bought that. It's in the thing just behind me.
Yeah.
um and yeah, that's something I do. I mean, I wouldn't say I make use of it a lot, but I it's interesting to play around with. There's some functional prints that I've made, for instance. I mean, the thing I tend to print most often is stuff for the printer itself, which is, I
Yeah.
understand, completely
Yeah.
irrational, but
Yeah.
it does seem to be the thing I do. And the other thing I've been looking at, with very recently, is LED pixel controllers, that kind of thing, because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I wanted to put a light show outside my house. I mentioned
That's
on
cool.
Twitter a few weeks ago, and bought a too many LEDs to stick around my house, and spent far too long in the freezing cold gluing those to my house. And
Yeah,
and
yeah, but
yeah,
that's
that was
cool though. Yeah,
fantastic.
so
Got a lot of.
that's a cool thing. Yeah, so your house is going to light up now all year round potentially if you wanted it to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the
Cool.
lights are permanent now, and yeah, there's a good 600 of them. And yeah, I mean, the thing is, they don't have to be Christmas. They can be any color. They can be, they can, you know, do something for Halloween, for instance, or not Fourth
Well,
of July. That's
I've
the
got a
States,
I've got
but
a thing.
any other celebration.
I got a thing for you now. So what you could do is tie that into your work, so that when you're doing some security hunting, when you find a 0-day attack, you can
Go
turn your
red.
house red, or because you've got
Yeah,
pixels, haven't
yeah,
you?
yeah,
So
yeah,
you could program individual pixels there. So you could
yes, yeah.
program the actual attack in Morse code.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless really with that, and that's why I wanted to do that rather than just LED strips, for instance. Pixels are
Mm.
are much more flexible with what you can do with them, and I bought a ridiculous pixel controller for it, which certainly didn't need to do. And I mentioned that because I don't know if you can see the glow behind me just moving along
Yeah, yeah,
that shelf there. I put that together for about five, 5 to 10 quid.
yeah.
That's a little Arduino ESP thing, which was vastly cheaper than the thing I bought to do the lights outside. And really, I think it would have done just as good a job. And it was actually easier to use
Mm.
and has a better user interface. So yeah, I've learned that. Try out the cool stuff, try out the programming yourself, and a little bit of soldering. And yeah, it's that thing is gonna. I'm gonna certainly gonna work on that and make it do more things than just that. But yeah, that's
No,
uh,
that's
I say
brilliant.
it as
Yeah.
a sort of a side project to keep me interested.
Do you know, I think side projects for me, they were something that, it just eats into your time. And of course, it eats into your time, your personal time, when you could be, chilling with the family, watching a movie. And don't get me wrong, again, I hope I don't neglect my family. I do spend a good amount of time. I think, again, it's probably just because of COVID at the moment. We all find ourselves locked in our houses with ample time, and I love my family to the world and back. Of course I do, but sometimes it's nice to come and sit in the office for a few hours and tinker with a servo or a set of lights. It's I think for me, I
Yeah.
think what I've learned about those little side projects is that sometimes they can inspire other ways of working and other ways of looking at things. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm a seasoned veteran of side projects. I'm nothing of the sort, but it's just fun. It's really good fun doing it, I find. So yeah, it's
Mm.
nice to see what yours are, Dean. No, I
Yeah.
think, to be honest, Dean, we're approaching the hour mark now. So I mean, any final thoughts that you want to add before
Well,
we call it a day?
no, I mean, at
Don't.
one point, just then, you referred to the fact that we didn't really plan this video at all. This has obviously been ad-libbed.
Hmm.
There's been there's been no prep for this from my point of view, or yours, apart from obviously all of the this fantastic setup you've got with the screens here. I mean, it's at one point, honestly, I forgot this was being recorded,
Yeah.
and this was just a conversation. So hopefully that hasn't come across too badly. But no, thank you for inviting me to this. This has been really, really good. Thank
No,
you.
thank you, Dean. I think no, it's been great having you on, and yeah, like just to echo what you said, I think for me personally, as my YouTube, my Jonnychipz Cloud Talk with Jonnychipz, this is about me having a chat with a colleague, just talking, chewing the fat on technology and where we've each been in our careers. Like I say, me and Dean have worked together for years now, and we'll hopefully when COVID disappears, we'll be back on the road and meeting each other for a couple of beers and having a laugh about things. But I mean, this experience is great, and I think everything Dean has said, hopefully that'll reflect with a lot of other people out there in the community, or for those guys that are just starting out in IT. Just to reflect on what we do. I suppose I hesitate to use the word seasoned veterans, but we've lived and breathed IT for a number of years. We're by all means, we're seen as experts in certain areas, but there's definitely a lot to be said about the way of things and how things are changing, and Dean's story, my story. So hopefully you've all taken a little bit of information out of this video, and if you have watched the entire video, well done, and thanks for getting to the end. um, Massive thanks, Dean. Really do appreciate jumping on, and hopefully this will be the first of many. Yeah, I think as your cloud challenge goes on, I'd love to kind of jump on and talk to you ad hoc now and again about what you've been up to, if you're up for that. But thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I mean, if sort of some bite-sized updates would be brilliant. I think it would be a good way for me to share what I've learned. You're right. In lockdown, in COVID, in during COVID, it is really boring to be alone in your own house,
No.
even with got family and stuff. But it can be it can be difficult to just be looking at the same four walls and interacting with the same people, doing the same thing. So yeah, this has been brilliant. So yeah, I'd jump at the chance to come back. Thank you.
No, thanks a lot, Dean. And on that note, big thanks to Dean Ellerby. Don't forget to follow Dean at Dean_Ellerby, and look out for his blog. So it was getmodern.co.uk. Thanks all for watching. It's been great to have you. Please like and subscribe if you've got something out of this video. That would be really appreciated. Until next time, I've been John Lunn, and he's been... I pointed the wrong way then, Dean. He's been Dean Ellerby.
Yeah, I'm over there.
You're over there. Cheers, Dean.
Yeah. Cheers.